Greetings and welcome to this week's gathering of the Church of the Oak. My name is Charlie. I am a Christopagan druid and priest of Bridget.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm a Christopagan druid and sous chef to the Dagda.
And today we are going to have a bit of a meditate and a thought about a kind of wellness that often goes unseen. It's one that we actually struggled with and found a need to name so that we would be able to discuss it and have a visible framework for. Brian got really into this over the last few weeks, and I think he has kind of excavated language that has helped me to recontextualize a lot of things. I'm just going to say it that way. And we're hoping that through this experience, we can share that with you and maybe help you to have a little bit better context in your own life as well. And yeah, it is odd that original blessing seems to be so complicated. Yeah. As for those of you who are new, we practice creation spirituality, which has at its heart the idea that everything was created in original blessing, not original sin. That when God created the universe, he said, Ki Tov, that all is good. It is good. And that we are all born in that basic goodness, and everything else that happens is a layer on top of that. And I think part of it is, we've spent so long with our civilizations dominated by Augustine's idea of original sin that it feels really hard sometimes to just excavate ourselves back down to that ground blessing that is present in all things. But it's not just in those cultures. I mean, this is something the Buddha talks about a lot as well. So we are going to open our gathering, as we always do, with an encircling prayer or a Kaim prayer. And if you've never done this before, don't worry, everyone is welcome. There are no required beliefs. There are no required actions. You can listen or you can participate along with us in the chat. So the encircling prayer, I'm going to call for peace in the four directions, as is Druidic tradition. And then we are going to invite into our circle those things that we want to be near to us. And we are going to cast out of our circle that which we want to be far. And you can feel free to add into the chat, just say into the room that you are, or just think to yourself, what do you want to have near to you, and what do you want to have afar? All right? Let's begin. May there be peace in the east. May there be peace in the south. May there be peace in the west. May there be peace in the north. May there be peace below us. May there be peace above us. May there be peace within us. O great eternal light that flared forth from the first beginning, we ask you to enkindle the flame of our circle, that we may know that we are all rooted in the one life, that we are all one in that one life, that we are drops free from the ocean. We ask that your presence may be near to us, and our sense of loneliness and disconnection be far.
May right relationship be close to us, and may othering be far. May joy be close to us, and alienation and disconnect far. May peace be close to us, and coercion far.
May hope ever be close to us, and may despair ever be afar. Drink deeply of this grace. It comes from the same well as you. Original blessing creates the world, and the world grows in original blessing. Do you see? In
In
blessing
blessing I
I was
was conceived.
conceived.
In blessing I was born. In blessing I live. In blessing I die. Blessing grows, changes, arises from new and old wonders alike. Blessing is fresh in every taste savored. Blessing is all in all. I am not blessing, but it is with me. Blessing is not permanent, but it is never lost. Blessing is intertwined with everything that is, was, or ever shall be. Amen.
Amen.
So this this concept of verdure, Verdure, something I've been, you should say, playing around with for decades now. Kind of started with a thought concept that uh, came about, I thought was scripturally based, and upon investigating that further, it was, but wasn't. It was actually a combination of like 4 or 5 different scriptures plus several things from Buddhist scriptures that were all kind of mashed together.
Deep ecumenism at its best.
Deep ecumenism at its best. All just rattling around in my head. And it's something I started playing with through practice, through experimentation out in the world, out and about in my daily goings. And I got very excited a couple weeks ago because a new thought entered into the picture and rattled around in there until we finally were able to, I was finally able to give it birth. So the thing is, have you ever been out and about your daily life and run into someone or a place that is just radiating with life, with joy, with peace? So much so that you can feel it. It is palpable. Being in their presence, whether it's a person that's radiating it or a place, you yourself feel enlivened, just filled with life and joy and peace.
I remember the first time I met Father Hugh. That was my experience. He was not the first person that I had felt that from, but it was so thick in the air that just being around him felt like you were at peace. Like you almost knew he was there before he arrived because your shoulders just went down and you just relaxed, and then you looked over and there he was walking into the garden. And yeah, it's a powerful experience that hopefully everyone has had at least at some point in their life.
And that was the thing for me, is I knew it wasn't charisma. I run into charismatic people. It was something different from that. So I knew it wasn't, it was this other thing. And I had started playing around with this concept of joy, not how it isn't an emotion. Joy is a state of being, a place that you can just enter into and be joyous or be joy. And I found that I was able to do that as well for myself, where I could just be filled with joy and peace and life and just radiate it out. And I would watch how others, when coming into my presence, they would just be, they would just, something would attract them. They would want to stay there. We also experimented this with a location. And at the time, we knew what our intention was for setting up the location, for creating a sacred space that was a public space that we maintained as a sacred space, and it would come and go from. But and we knew that we wanted it to be an oasis, a getaway place, and it was fascinating just watching people when they enter that space. They could feel that. They would want to come back to that space. I know personally when I would experience that, either with a space or with a person, I would lament some, and I've heard others lament like, "Oh, I wish I could like have that or feel that as well." And the thing is we all can experience verdure, and we can all be verdurous.
You keep using that word. What does verdure mean?
So this is it's a state of being. Um, it is it's a virtue of wellness. I think is how I really grokked the term there, as a virtue of wellness, state of being. It's made up of being in right relationship with yourself and with your surroundings. It's a state of joy and peace. This well-being is greenness. It's that greenness of being alive. Uh, those that are familiar with Hildegard's work, that Viriditas, is that kind of that greenness, that ever-flowing river of greening that happens out in life. Verdure is that for yourself on the inside.
So if I'm hearing you right, this verdure that you're talking about is the state of well-being that we have when we are green, like a vibrant plant, that we have that spiritual growth that's just alive in us. It's kind of a state of our own wellness that's not necessarily the flow of the energy like what Hildegard is talking about with Viriditas, but it's kind of our state of just greenness, of aliveness, of being fully well.
Yeah,
Right?
one way I like to talk about it is, for those of hopefully everyone's had that experience of being alive, that feeling of being alive. It's that, but it's flowing from within to the point that you're so full of it that it flows out. That you yourself are in a state of the experience of aliveness, of being alive, to the point that you're overflowing of it. And those around you will experience being alive when you're in that moment, just being in your presence as well. It's it's not earned. You can't like logic it into existence. Everyone has it and has it in them, because we're already alive with that one life. It's a matter of just connecting, just um, opening the self up with and living, because that's why we talk about living in right relationship. Um, and once we're connected in to that source, it just fills and flows out. Um, it's interesting because it's something that can't be taken from you either. Like you can't, somebody can't come in and force you to give up your verdure. They can't, uh, they can't do that. But we can be tricked into giving it up, into disconnecting ourselves. Um, we can, they can hurry us, they can fragment our attention, they can make us only feel that worth is conditional. Um, they can train us to live, as you like to say, in that narrow, dry place.
In
Um,
in Mitzrayim, in the narrow place, yeah.
yeah,
So what I hear you saying is this is the state of wellness that gets kind of, if you will, kind of sucked out of us when we're distracted from the act of living, the act of being alive, and we're just kind of in survival mode.
hmm
That we're just, or even just kind of in automaton mode where it's like the alarm goes off, it means do this, the alarm goes off, then do this. And you get that kind of dry feeling that you're just kind of going through the motions and you're not actually experiencing or feeling life. This is that wellness that we have when we are finding ways to connect to who we are and who we want to be and who we should be and could be, that we're having those moments of just true life, like when we're with our friends telling jokes and laughing and doing that thing that just wants to be born through us, whether that's drawing, painting, cooking, hanging out with friends, playing video games, those things that really connect us to ourselves, being strategic, those things that connect us to who we are. That this is where Viriditas kind of looks outward into more like cosmic scale things. Verdure is looking into us and trying to help us to see, well, what are the things that make you feel alive? What makes you feel green? Am I right about that?
Yeah, yeah, and you can really think of it like tending a garden. Um, to get connected in, you literally are tending a garden. Each individual is going to be a little different. Um, this is why we started with right relationship and joy and peace, because some of us may be too anxious, and so we need to connect back into our peace. Some may be suffering from too much coercion. Uh, but as you tend that garden, as you get further into that state, and it can be literally anywhere. There have been times I'm at a workplace, I'm doing a job for someone else. This is most people would think like this is the most drudgerish, most uh, disconnected time where you can be alienated from. I mean, you're literally alienated from your labor. You're doing for hire work for someone else that you don't necessarily want to be there. But instead of dwelling on all that, I was able to find a state of right relationship where was able to contextualize in my own head and connect myself to those things that brought me joy in the tasks that was ordered to do. I was able to separate myself from that alienation by recognizing, like at the restaurant, I love that service. I love to cook. So I would connect myself into those acts of birthing and creating and to put all that into a right relationship so that even though I was in the middle of a dinner rush, all this chaos and everything going on, I could have this peace. And the garden would just be watered and grow like crazy, and it would just start flowing forth um, through that. Is that making sense?
Yes, it's making a lot of sense.
Yeah. And that kind of is that part, because since joy isn't an emotion, you don't have to worry about necessarily what emotional state you're in, because you can be deeply sad about something and still have joy, because joy is it's a choice. It's a state that you are in. So you choose to be joyful.
I mean, a good example of that, just yesterday we were at a memorial service, and while we were all grieving, when we started telling stories about the person that had gone beyond, this joy came out of people, and people started laughing, telling those stories, and laughing at hearing the stories. And it really turned into just a celebration of her life in such a beautiful way. And it didn't end the grieving, it didn't end the sorrow, but that joy found its way to be there because all of our memories of her had that in it. And even though she was not physically with us anymore.
Yeah. And same thing with peace.
That joy, her joy, was still contagious and able to fill that space.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the same thing with peace. Peace is also a state of mind. One of the examples is right there in the Bible. You have this raging storm going on, and you have Jesus in the middle of this storm, just it's all calm, and there are many other examples of what would be considered very not peaceful environments where people can choose a state of peace. And that's the big distinction and trick there, is that the systems of our world that we have created to live in. The powers of principalities, if you want to. All of that is created to make us think that we either have peace as a thing given to us or it's taken away from us by our circumstances. And that's the big lie. And same thing with joy. Joy isn't something that's given to us or taken away from us by our circumstances. We have joy, or we have peace, or we don't. We give it up. And it's one of those things, we once we have it, even if we give it up, we can still have it again. It's not like we lost it. Oh darn, we got to go on some quest or anything. The beauty of this is it is just there. All we have to do is just accept it again. We were talking about one of the examples. Actually, there's many examples of during the, I don't know if we're even allowed to say on the streams, that time period back in the late 30s, with all the bad concentration camps going on. I think we're allowed to say that term.
I don't know.
I don't know anymore. But there are good examples in there where there were priests that were able to enter this moment of peace and moments of joy.
The stories about Maximilian Kolb and others who tried to help people have that place even in those darkest times. Yeah.
And those are, they're extreme examples of where outside forces, through coercion, through force of violence, tried to rob them of their joy and peace. They were still able to hold it. So I sat back and I was like, well, if they could do that in those extreme circumstances, the minor occurrences in my own daily life at work are nothing. So I should be able to do it too. And then through practice, because it takes a little practice, and there were many times where I lost that joy, I lost that peace, I gave it up, sometimes foolishly. A car would drive in a way I didn't care for, and there goes the joy and peace. But the nice thing is the minute I was aware that I had given it up, I could then pause and have it back, tend to that garden again, and it would grow again, and I would have it again.
But Verdure is so much more than that, in the way that you were explaining it, that it is a full state of wellness that has just that green aliveness to it, and that peace and joy and these other things are just signs of that aliveness and not ends in and of themselves.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the thing is, most people, when they run into it, they'll be like, this person's so full of joy. Wow. But what they're resonating with is that wellness, that aliveness that is just pouring forth from them. They may only see it their brains are only able to translate it in those other terms. As we've talked about quite a bit over on Creation Paths, a lot of this has to be filtered through our own personal translation engines. That is our minds, and our knowledge base and our limitations. Like I said, this is something I started trying to translate. I've been trying to translate for decades now, and be able to finally articulate, ish.
It's a very fascinating idea, and it's something I think we're going to be spending a lot of time digging into and talking about, because it is a very ecological view of the soul. And I think that is something that we really need right now, is to stop being as singularly focused on this thing or that thing or the other thing, and find a way to really connect in to the whole web of systems that exist within us. And this, to me, gives kind of an opening into that to do it.
And that's the thing. It's known when it's experienced, and just reflecting back on those experiences and thinking about those moments, and then testing, like what that wellness, those moments, just testing it and thinking about it and trying it out, and baby steps. Like, I don't know, you're out driving in traffic and someone starts annoying you, just trying to think, the first time I experienced it, I actually or the first time I was trying to play with it, I literally thought of it as if I prayed to God, God would give me joy. And it was one of those things I would be given every time I asked for it. Um, there was no limit, and I would only lose it when I give it up. And so once I framed it like that, just be out driving, get annoyed, give up my joy. And then the minute I remember, I would just be like, okay, Lord, bless me with joy again. I screwed up. And then I would just start feeling this overwhelming sense of joy again, fill me, and start overflowing. This wellness would just start flowing and overflowing.
And that really is, and that really is teshuva in practice. That is what returning to the path is. It's not beating ourselves up. It's not guilt and shame and all of the other things that have accreted to it over time. It's just that moment of, oh, wrong path. Let me get back over here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the sad thing is we're, once again, those systems, those powers and principalities we live with raised us in this very judgment, beat ourselves up because we've been darned sinners. We got to be beating ourselves up and pull out the whip and punish ourselves for thinking wrong or doing wrong or getting mad because somebody, was in the way we feel, driving stupid, or whatever the example is. But that's not what any of that is. And being able to see that this is a system of coercion to alienate us from our actual joy allows us to just let it go and then go, okay, I'm off the path. I'm going to go ahead and walk back to the path and be on it again. And it, in a way, is that simple. So easy to say, so hard to practice, but practice does make perfect.
What I keep hearing you say is that verdure is something that is experienced. It is being able to kind of tap into the waters of life, in that, just as, to use a metaphor to build a mythic image here, if Viriditas is the stream that's flowing through, then our verdure is the garden alongside of it. And anytime it gets dry, we can dip into that stream and pull more of that in and have that kind of refreshing and renewal at any time. And that this is a way of kind of reconceiving our lives and our idea of wellness in terms of how alive it is, how green it is, how, verdurous it is, and kind of taking us away from other metrics that are often used, like prosperous or healthy, because for those of us who have chronic illnesses, how healthy are you is and it's an ecumenical matter. Like, where are we setting our scale here? And those can be distracting on a lot of ways. But looking at wellness in these terms of, how green are we, how alive are we, how connected are we, and gives us kind of a better language set, a better way of conceiving of our own wellness, so that we can connect to that no matter what our circumstances are. Am I right about that?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And it really is, and it can be, like I said, it can be anywhere, anytime. Another example I like to give, personal example, middle of a dinner rush, backed up with tickets. I've got all these dinners I need to fix, all this stuff going on. So the coercion that comes in, the pressure of, I need to make all these people happy and I have to execute all this stuff that is beyond my abilities in the moment. The reality is a lot of those things are actually honestly out of my control. Whether somebody's going to be upset or not upset over the timeliness of a dish or their time expectation or even perception. Because that was something I found later on, is like, most people, since time is relative, I was distracting myself with values and metrics that weren't even real. They were illusions stacked on top of illusions. And instead of allowing that coercion to trick me into giving up, my verdurous state, I would see that for what it is. I'm being the best I can be. I'm connected in the moment. I'm creating the most amazing thing I can create, and just did that. Everything else, I let it be. It was what it was, because it was beyond my control. It was outside of me.
So putting all of that together, what I'm hearing is that this is a way of conceptualizing wellness where instead of micromanaging a lot of other external expectations that are put upon us, we're actually trying to get to a place where we are tending our own garden and figuring out what flowers, what plants, what things we want to be growing within it, and weeding out the things that we don't want to be there. That this is very much more of a gardening metaphor and a way of seeing the soul as a garden that we tend.
Very much so. Very much so. And it's that thing, it's being so connected into yourself and life in general, keeping in mind, like you said, all those external things are external. Technically, you cannot control them. You can only control yourself. And so being mindful of the coercions, of the alienations, of all those other things that are there to, trick you into giving up your joy, your peace. And that's why we talk about living in right relationship, and why that resonated so much with me, and why you hear me mention it so often, because that is living in right relationship with going back to that work example, that work environment, is being the best Brian that I can be in the moment. That's right relationship. That's the best I can do. Everyone else, that's on them. I can try to be an example of how they should behave. And in putting myself in that role, then once again, being the best example, being joyful, being peaceful, that then flows out. I fill up so much that it flows forth. And then others around will start to see, and actually will start to fill themselves with joy, with peace. You've, for those that have listened to our previous Creation Past episode, I talk about working retail during the holiday season. This is like the dreaded thing of everybody. And I've actually shared before, you can go back and listen to these moments where I talk about these experiences of when people approach me in the line, as angry as they might seem from a distance, that melts the closer they get to me. And by the time I'm interacting with them, they're in a state of peace and joyfulness. And at the time, I didn't have this full translation, this full understanding, but that is that verdure, that's being verdurous, where it's so overflowing that even just they want to be in the presence. I'll have people intentionally wait a long time in line and not switch lines to a shorter line, or be able to leave quicker, just so that they could be in that presence and experience that aliveness and that wellness.
So the last quality that I hear you talking about here is that what makes this kind of wellness special and interesting, and something that we should be spending a lot more time thinking about, is unlike other forms of wellness, which are very self-contained or self-monitoring, this is a wellness that's contagious.
Very much so. And I think that when we think about it, the opposite of that is, I think a lot of people have seen and experienced and talk about the opposite of it, where they talk about social contagions. When somebody's grumpy or angry, they're living in that narrow place. They're so desiccating that they dry up other people's gardens that they interact with, that they run into. And it's the opposite effect of it, but sometimes it helps get clarity to look at the opposite, because you can see somebody, we've all run into those people who have just such bad attitudes. It brings the whole room down. And this is that opposite state, where you're so full of wellness that wellness spreads to everybody around you.
So I think it's time for us to try to taste and see a little bit. So take a moment and kind of dig into this in meditation. We like to perform a form of meditation that we call within, around, through. And we like to call it that because it tells you exactly how to do it. And we also really like this form of meditation because it's very adaptive. You can focus in or widen your view on what you are looking at in these three places. So we're going to be taking a little bit of time here in collective meditation to examine what's going on within, what's going on around us, and what's flowing through us. And we're going to do that by connecting to our breath. So if you can take a nice, slow, intentional breath in and out. Let's try that again. Nice and slow, in and out. Okay, let's do that one more time. Breathe in and out. And depending on how you work best, either soften your gaze or close your eyes and start focusing on what you're feeling inside. Start by noticing the little things that are there. Maybe how comfortable you are where you're sitting. Maybe a grumble in your tummy telling that you're hungry. Maybe a little twinge in your back telling you that you need to fix your posture. Whatever it is, just start small. And don't forget that breathing, just nice and slow. In and out. Now, while we're in here, imagine, if you can, a verdant green garden. And I use the word verdant because it's raw, it's young, it's not quite grown to maturity yet. It's that special kind of green of the new shoots of spring. It hasn't come into the full verdure that it will have later when it's vibrant and fully alive. Maybe you're cold and so you see those little first peaks of the daffodil through the snow, or whatever the snow plants are where you are. Those first little tentative branches that are starting to grow up. If you can't visualize that in your mind, just think to yourself, there is so much growing within me. There's so much life within me. From the literal flora that we all have, that we live in mutual benefit with, that helps to keep us alive. It's all of the little things in your mind that remind your heart to beat, remind you to breathe, that remind you what you're supposed to be doing next and what the next words are you're supposed to say. All of those are the little flowers growing within you. Now take a slow, deep breath in and out. Now start to notice what it is around you. Is it quiet? Is it loud? Is it hot? Is it cold? What's going on around you? Are there cats jumping up and down on the stand, making noise? That's what's happening around me. What is it? Do you feel any aliveness around you? Maybe your pets, maybe the birds outside, maybe just the knowledge of your neighbors and what they're up to. Just get a sense of being surrounded by all that life, the grass, the trees, the flowers, the wind in the air, the clouds that move by, all alive and moving. Now, turn your attention to what's passing through you. Start with a deep breath in and out. The obvious thing moving in and out of you is air. And that water carries oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. It carries water vapor in and out. It carries so much in and out. But we are interconnected with the world around us in so many ways. Ideas flow into us, words and images flow out. Just take a moment to notice what is flowing into you that is watering that garden. What is flowing out of you that is greening the world around? What is flowing into you that maybe is damaging the soil of that garden and making it hard for things to grow? And what might be flowing out of you that is damaging the soil around you, making it harder for things to grow? This one's a hard one for us to do. You need to do this without judgment. We're just noting, seeing what those things might be. What new things do you want to have growing within you? What could you plant that you've always wanted to grow in your internal garden? A new skill, new talent, just a new way to rest and recuperate. And then ask yourself, what is flowing out of you? What can you do to bring that goodness back home so that it can come in and grow? Now, when you're ready, take a deep breath in and out. And as you breathe out, reconnect to your body, to the space that you are in. Let's do that one more time. Deep breath in and out. And if you closed your eyes, now is a good time to open. All right. I think it's always good to wiggle your fingers after meditation just to get fully back into your body. Just a little jazz hands. Wiggle your toes.
So I was going to give everyone some homework this week. Think of one thing that truly makes you feel alive and go do it. Experience it. If you think of it in the moment, be mindful of how you feel and how it's helping you to feel and how you can connect into that more. It's hard homework, I know. I know for a lot of us, there's those spaces in nature that we feel we experience that. Plan a trip, go do it.
At least do something small. Go outside.
Yeah.
Go to a local park. Just do something, anything. As we were heading out today, I want you to remember that we do not have to undo our circle because the circle is always there. We are all connected in the great circle of the one life. And as we head out, oh, blessed Hildegard, whose teachings are so helpful to us today. You taught us to look for the green wisdom and the green power that flows through all things and to connect with it. Help us now to see how that plants a garden within us so that we can find the wellness, the peace, the hope, and the connections that we need to build a better and more sustainable world to come. Amen.
Amen.